Chris Van Tulleken decided to do a special experiment. He chose to study himself because this was the only ethical way to do such a test without needing permission from a safety review board. For 1 month, he ate mostly ultra-processed foods. This meant about 80% of his daily meals were items like cereals, packaged breads, snacks, ready meals, and sweet drinks. These are the foods often found in the middle parts of almost every big shop around the world. Before and after this month of eating, special pictures were taken of his brain. Dr. Van Tulleken did not think his brain would show many changes so quickly. He believed any effects would first appear in his body, like gaining weight. He was partly right. His weight and body fat went up noticeably. But the brain scans showed something very surprising. They revealed big changes in the functional connectivity between different areas of his brain. These areas are known to be important for automatic actions, like habits, and for feelings of reward and craving. What was more interesting was that some of these changes in his brain could still be seen even months after he stopped the experiment and returned to his normal way of eating. This experiment by Dr. Van Tulleken was just one person's story. It means it was about only one person, so it cannot prove what happens to everyone. He himself has said this. One person's brain, scanned just twice, cannot answer a big scientific question on its own. However, his personal study clearly showed an important issue. It highlighted a question that has become very big in how we understand food and health. For almost 20 years, scientists have focused on how food affects the heart or body weight. Now, this question is shifting to the brain. This story of one doctor's experiment reflects a much bigger global change in how we think about food. It makes us ask a scary but important question. What are these processed foods really doing to the main organ in your head? This organ, your brain, controls everything else in your body, including how you think, feel, and move. The study of food and what it does to us is changing fast. It is no longer just about calories or fat. It is about how food changes the very neural pathways in our brains. 2. What processed food is. Most people walk through a supermarket and buy food without truly knowing what processed food means. It's important to understand this term because it helps us see what we are putting on our plates. Scientists use a system called NOVA to sort foods. This system was created by a Brazilian epidemiologist named Carlos Monteiro. Unlike older ways that looked at nutrients like fat or sugar, NOVA sorts food by how much it has been changed by industry. It has 4 main groups. The first group includes foods that are unprocessed or minimally processed. Think of a fresh carrot, a raw egg, or plain oats. These foods are very close to their natural state. The second group is processed culinary ingredients. These are things we use to cook, like oils, butter, or sugar. They come from nature, but are changed a little to make them easier to use. The third group is processed foods. These combine items from the first two groups through methods like canning or fermenting. Canned vegetables, cheese, or freshly baked bread fit here. They are changed, but not too much. Then there is the fourth group, ultra-processed foods. These are very different. They are industrial formulations built mostly from parts taken out of other foods. These can be starches, specific proteins, or special oils that have been changed. They also have many additives that a home cook would never keep in a kitchen, like emulsifiers, colorings, flavor enhancers, and preservatives. Common examples are packaged breads, breakfast cereals, frozen pizzas, sodas, and reconstituted meat products such as chicken nuggets and hot dogs. The NOVA classification system shows that what truly matters for our health is not just the nutrients listed. It's more about what has been done to the food before it reaches our plates. This industrial transformation changes the food's texture, its structure, and how quickly our bodies take in its energy, no matter what the label says about calories or nutrients. These ultra-processed foods are often made to hit a special bliss point. This is a perfect mix of sugar, fat, and salt that makes them taste incredibly good. This is done to make us want to buy and eat them again and again. It's more about creating a habit than providing proper nourishment. In the United States, more than half of all the calories people eat each day come from these ultra-processed foods. For children and teenagers, this number is even higher, almost 62%. This means that a large part of our diet is made of these products. Are we really eating for health, or are we simply feeding a manufactured habit that has been carefully built for us? 3. The older brain. Eating certain foods every day might make our brains get old faster. This is a truly scary thought for many people. Scientists have been looking closely at how the food we buy from the supermarket affects our minds as we get older. They have found worrying connections. Long-term studies have followed tens of thousands of people for a decade or more. These studies show a clear and strong link between eating a lot of ultra-processed foods and a faster decline in brain health. For example, a large study in America watched over 10,000 adults for 8 years. It found that people whose diets were more than half ultra-processed foods had brains that worked like someone 7 to 10 years older. This means their memory, reasoning, and thinking speed were like people typically test later in life, showing accelerated cognitive aging. Another study from Australia looked at many people and found a clear pattern. The more ultra-processed food they ate, the worse their attention scores became. They also faced a much higher risk of getting dementia later in life. Those who ate the most ultra-processed foods had about a third more risk of this severe memory loss. Brain scans from these studies even showed physical changes. Researchers noticed that the gray matter in their brains became thinner. More work, including from the well-known Framingham Heart Study, also pointed in the same direction. People who ate the most ultra-processed foods had a 25 to 35% higher risk of developing all types of dementia. Another study even found that heavy ultra-processed food intake was linked to a 5% reduction in hippocampal volume. This part of the brain is very important for forming new memories. Scientists are working to understand why these changes happen. One main idea is that diets high in additives and low in fiber can upset the balance of bacteria in our gut. This imbalance can lead to low-grade inflammation and problems with how our bodies use insulin. This combination might damage the hippocampus over time. It could also interfere with how different parts of the brain communicate, especially between the areas for planning and those for habit and reward. So while we see strong evidence linking ultra-processed foods to faster brain aging and serious memory conditions, a big question remains. What are the exact chemical processes that cause our minds to slowly slip away as we get older, driven by the foods we eat every day? Pictures of your brain. For many years, when people talked about health and food, they often thought about the heart or losing weight. But now, scientists are looking at something new: the brain. In the past few years, big studies have used brain scans from many people. These studies include tens of thousands of participants and show clear proof that eating a lot of ultra-processed foods changes the brain's physical structure. This is a big revelation. These large studies, like one that looked at nearly 30,000 brain scans from the UK Biobank, found something important. People who often ate ultra-processed foods had a different brain architecture compared to those who ate less. It's like comparing two different building plans. These differences were clear enough to be noticed. This means the food we choose might be changing how our brain is put together. Scientists are now trying to understand how this damage happens. They believe there are two main paths. The first is direct damage. This means the ingredients or chemicals in ultra-processed food can directly harm brain tissue. They can cause changes in the deep parts of the brain that manage hunger and eating. For example, some studies found measurable cellular changes in these areas. The second path is indirect damage. This path is connected to other health problems that often come with eating a lot of ultra-processed food. For instance, these foods can lead to more body fat and metabolic problems. These problems, in turn, can then cause harm to the brain. So it's not just the food itself, but also its effects on the rest of the body that can impact the brain. These brain scans offer strong visual proof of these changes. They show us that diet is not just about our waistline, it is also about our brain's health. However, these pictures also bring a big chicken or egg question to scientists. Does a changed brain make a person crave unhealthy foods? Or does eating unhealthy foods cause the brain to change over time? This is a deep mystery that current studies cannot fully solve. Looking at a brain scan at one moment, which is called a cross-sectional study, cannot tell us what came first. To truly answer this, researchers need to watch the same brains over many years. This will help them understand the real cause and effect between what we eat and the physical state of our brain. 5. Is it an addiction? The idea that everyday snacks can be like drugs is a big discussion. Many people wonder if they are truly addicted to ultra-processed foods. Scientists look at a special part of the brain called the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. This pathway makes us feel good when we do things needed for survival, like eating or drinking. It is the same pathway that responds to some drugs. When we eat tasty food with many calories, this pathway releases dopamine. This is a natural way our body tells us to find more of that important food. But ultra-processed foods are different. They mix sugar, fat, and salt in ways rarely found in nature. This mix can activate our ancient brain wiring very strongly. This can make us eat even when we are not hungry. When this pathway gets too much activity for a long time, it can lead to overstimulation. This means the brain's dopamine receptors might become less sensitive. So, to feel the same good feeling, you might need to eat more food. This is a pattern similar to how people who use some substances need more over time to get the same effect. This can lead to compulsive consumption. It is when you feel a strong need to keep eating, even if you want to stop or know it is not good for you. Some experts say this process can be compared to a classic addiction. In 2025, an international group of addiction researchers agreed that eating too much ultra-processed food shows genuine parallels to recognized substance use disorders. However, not everyone agrees with this strong claim. Some scientists are skeptics. They point out that a milkshake does not create the same strong dopamine rush as hard drugs. A study in 2024 looked at people drinking a high-fat, high-sugar milkshake. The study showed that the dopamine response was different for each person. Importantly, it was often much smaller than the response seen with many addictive drugs. This suggests that ultra-processed food might not hijack the brain in the exact same way as hard drugs. The actual situation is likely more complex and subtle. These foods do engage the brain's reward system. For some people, this effect can be so strong that it overrides normal satiety signals, which are the messages that tell you when you have eaten enough and are full. People's genes can make them more vulnerable, and stress also appears to increase a preference for high-fat, high-sugar foods. So the question remains, where is the real line between a strong craving for a snack and a true addiction? 6. Food and your feelings. Many studies now show a clear link between packaged foods and how we feel. People who eat a lot of ultra-processed foods often feel more sad or depressive. They also report higher levels of anxiety and daily stress. This connection is strong. Some studies found that people who ate the most ultra-processed foods had about 50% higher chance of having symptoms of sadness and worry. Even just having a lot of these foods in your diet can mean a 22% higher risk of feeling depressed later on. This shows how our everyday food choices might change our minds. The secret to this mood problem is often found in your stomach. Your gut and your brain are always talking to each other. This is called the gut-brain axis. Inside your stomach live trillions of tiny living things called bacteria. These good bacteria are important. They help make chemicals that keep your mood stable. They also help control inflammation in your body, even in your brain. However, ultra-processed foods often do not have the natural plant fibers that these good bacteria need to grow and be healthy. Instead, these foods have many additives. For example, some common additives are emulsifiers. These chemicals are used to make food smooth and help oil and water mix. But studies show that emulsifiers can harm the lining of your gut. When the gut lining is damaged, it can let bad signals of inflammation travel more easily to your brain. This constant inflammation can affect your mood and make you feel bad. Another problem is how quickly ultra-processed foods make your blood sugar change. They often contain a lot of refined sugars and starches. This makes your blood sugar go up very fast, then crash down just as quickly. These sudden changes can make it hard for your brain to work well. You might feel irritable, have trouble focusing, or experience what many people call brain fog. This affects not only strong feelings like depression, but also your general mental well-being every day. So the food we put into our bodies deeply affects our moods and how clearly we think. The way we take care of our digestive system seems to have a big impact on our minds. Could the answer to feeling better and thinking more clearly actually start with healing our stomachs and helping our gut bacteria thrive? Young brains. Young brains are very delicate. What a mother eats can change how a baby's brain grows inside her. Ultra-processed foods eaten during pregnancy can have lasting effects. The second and third parts of pregnancy are most important. During these times, a mother eating many ultra-processed foods might stop the baby's brain from connecting properly. This means the tiny signals in the brain, the wiring, might not form correctly. This happens not because of one thing, but for many issues, like small amounts of inflammation in the body and changes in the mother's gut bacteria. These unhealthy foods often lack important nutrients. Things like omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, iron, and protein are very important for a baby's brain. Not getting enough of these can affect a child's mood, memory, and thinking skills later. Some studies show that children of mothers who ate more ultra-processed food scored lower on tests for thinking and speaking when they were young. For example, Chinese children aged 4 to 7 who ate more than 2 types of these foods had worse scores on verbal understanding tests. High fructose corn syrup might even harm the part of the brain linked to memory in teenagers. Later in childhood and during teenage years, eating a lot of ultra-processed food is linked to poorer brain function. Teenagers in some studies showed lower scores on tests that check thinking skills. It also seemed to predict problems like being very active or not paying attention, hyperactivity, and inattention years later. This shows a sad intergenerational cycle. A mother's diet affects her baby's brain. Then the child grows up eating these foods, and the pattern continues. There are also early warning signs for serious diseases. One study looked at Parkinson's disease. This illness affects movement. It found that people who ate a lot of ultra-processed food had a much higher chance of showing prodromal signs. These are small signs that appear years before the main symptoms, like a poor sense of smell or feeling very tired during the day. This study suggested that diet could be one factor among many for such conditions. It's a serious matter because young brains are vulnerable and developing. Once certain brain connections are made incorrectly, they might not be easy to fix. The impact of these foods is irreversible in some cases. Breaking this harmful cycle is very important to protect the next generations from problems with their brains and health. This makes us wonder if we can stop this toxic trend for future children. 8. What we know now. In this chapter, we bring together what we have learned about ultra-processed foods and their effects on our brains. Many studies show that regularly eating these foods can change how our brains work, affecting our memory, mood, and attention. Brain scans reveal physical changes in the brains of people who eat a lot of ultra-processed items. We also saw how these foods might trigger cravings, upset our gut health, and affect young brains from babies to teenagers. However, science is always growing, and not all scientists agree on every detail. Some experts are skeptics. They ask for more in-depth clinical trials to firmly prove that ultra-processed foods directly cause these problems. They point out that people who eat more processed foods often face other difficulties, like lower income or higher stress, which could also affect brain health. It is a complex issue with many factors. Despite these debates, governments around the world are starting to act. In Washington, for example, policymakers are working on new rules. They aim to define ultra-processed foods and introduce regulation for them. For instance, there's a strong push to remove artificial colors from many food products. This shows how seriously this issue is now being taken in public health. Amidst the questions, one thing is widely agreed upon as helpful for brain health: a diet rich in minimally processed whole foods, especially plant-based options. The Mind diet serves as an excellent guide. This diet emphasizes eating green leafy vegetables, fresh berries, nuts, beans, whole grains, and fish. It suggests limiting foods like red meat, butter, cheese, sugary pastries, and fried items. Research consistently shows that following the mind diet can significantly reduce the risk of diseases like dementia, helping to protect vital brain regions for memory. Even people who start this eating pattern later in life can still benefit. This information empowers us to make better choices. While scientists continue to explore exact mechanisms, the overall consensus is that including more fresh, varied, and fiber-rich plant foods while reducing industrially made convenience foods leads to better brain health. What small, healthy change could you make to your daily meals this week to support your brain?